everybody, I'm Jenna Jones from the Environmental Engineering class of 2017, and I'm going to talk to you about my work placement. My work placement was with Seaspan. Seaspan is a shipbuilding and ship repair company, and they have 3 locations located here in the northwest in Canada. There's 2 locations in North Vancouver and 1 location in Victoria on Vancouver Island. Environment at Seaspan. There is a lot to do with the environment at Seaspan. Seaspan is in contact with the land, freshwater, and the marine environment. There are things to consider with these activities, such as hazardous waste, water treatment facilities, inspections, remediation, historical land use, air quality, spills, greenhouse gas emissions, and community environmental impacts. Hazardous wastes are plenty in a shipbuilding and repair environment. This includes things like gasoline, oils, paints, sandblasting materials that need to be monitored through standard operating procedures, best management practices, and people need to look at material safety data sheets and/or safety data sheets. My job at Seaspan to do with hazardous waste was to deliver an organized template to workers for MSDS and SDS sheets through Chemscape. It is an online database that holds all of the sheets, and my job was to organize all of the products that each business unit uses, and I would apply certain things like which PPE that they need to wear when they use a certain product, and what certain types of health effects that can happen if they were to ingest, touch, or other with these products. There are water treatment facilities at all 3 Seaspan locations. There is a wastewater treatment plant at the Vancouver Dry Dock and a wastewater treatment plant at Vancouver Shipyards. The picture that I'm showing you right now shows Vancouver Dry Dock, with the dry docks that fill with water and empty with water. So I'm just going to go over a little bit about what I learned about the wastewater treatment plant at the Vancouver Dry Dock, and I actually was able to create a process document for the dry dock so that if anybody was new, they could view this document and have a better understanding of the process. So basically the process starts with the drainage design of the dry dock. You can't see it in this picture, but I'll show you. Here are the 2 dry docks, and they're engineered so that their highest point is in the center and lowest points are on the edges, so that water naturally pours to the sides and also is slightly tilted towards where our wastewater collection is at the bottom here. And from there it goes into this barge. This barge is acts as a holding tank for all of the wash water, and it goes from this holding tank either to these other storage tanks or straight to the wash water treatment plant. The wash water treatment plant then has a settling tank, a sand filter, a carbon filter, a manganese filter, and soon to be new media, which they did not tell me what the new media was because the person I spoke to didn't know what it was because he's not the engineer for the facility. And then from there we can release it to municipal wastewater. But they do have to follow certain guidelines, so they constantly do testing of their water to make sure they're adhering to the guidelines, or they could face fines or even get their permit taken away. The reason why that we need the wash water plant is because of all the hazardous materials that is used on the dry docks, because the ships come and they just sit there on the dry docks, and they could be sandblasted or they could be painted, and there's all this material on the ground from all of this activity, and so they wash it all off all the ground. They wash the ground off before they let the vessel back into the water, because when they do that, the ground is subjected to the marine environment. The wash water isn't just water that is being washed off, it's also rainwater. They treat all rainwater that comes into contact with the dry dock, unless there's nothing on there, but they're usually pretty busy. Another part that I played at C-SPAN was participating in monthly inspections. So these inspections included going to a certain part of the property, and I'd have a list, and I would just check for environmental hazards, leaks or spills, containment. So if there is an open can of paint or gasoline, is it at least, it shouldn't be open, but is it at least over a secondary containment device? And also just good or poor housekeeping, taking note of what's going on in that area to see what needs to be improved on. And non-conformances, so there actually could be something that maybe we find a spill and we would report it, which would be unfortunate. I didn't see any of that. People are generally pretty good with what they're given. People seem to care a lot about the environment at C-SPAN, which is surprising because it's a pretty tradesy field. But yeah, so this is a photo of me in this contained area, just taking a general look at all of the equipment, making sure that there's no visible oil on the ground or anything. Another thing that C-SPAN does for the environment is rehabilitation. In the past, the property that they live on, there was a creek called McKay Creek, and it was actually filled in so that everybody could build ships and do all that stuff. And C-SPAN actually reopened it up. C-SPAN has hired biologists and environmental companies to come in and remediate the creek so that it can be a fish-bearing creek once again. And it actually already is. It didn't take long for the salmon to come back. So it's not perfect, but at least it's there again. Some organization events that they have with McKay Creek is they have planting events, so they actually invite employees to come out and do some planting and removal of invasive species, because that's a pretty big problem right now at the creek. And even on C-SPAN, invasive species, they grow pretty fast, and there's not someone always there to take care of them. Historical land use at C-SPAN is also interesting because there actually used to be a creosote company there coating logs and lumber in creosote, and so there's a huge amount of contamination in the soil and ground at C-SPAN, which isn't C-SPAN's fault, but it is such a big deal that they're right now, which I was able to witness, is they're installing a pump and treat well, which will have to run for over 80 years. So it's quite the long-term remediation project that C-SPAN is committed to. And all of the water that is treated through the pump and treat wells will be going to the groundwater treatment plant, which will be on site. And after that treatment, it will actually be able to be released right into the harbor. So, which is good. It doesn't have to be picked up by a truck and then treated somewhere, which would cost a lot more money for everybody. Air quality at C-SPAN is a pretty big deal. In the past, there have been issues with overspray, so it's a pretty sensitive subject, and people care a lot about air quality now with all that's happening in the world. And so there's permits that C-SPAN has to follow, and the air permit that we have currently, we kind of breached it because actually during a project I was in, which is this project here, I was monitoring while they were doing some painting outside, and what happened was some overspray from the paint was getting outside of the property lines, which is not allowed in the permit. It wasn't much, very small amount, but it was enough that it got the attention of a lot of people, a lot of big people in the company, and caused a lot of questions to be asked and changes to be made in procedural things. So this is a map that I created. You can't see it very well, unfortunately, because of the way I have to present to you, but basically it's showing which days I found contamination. And so I would go, this is the entire property at Vancouver Shipyard, and I would walk around the entire property every day that they were doing painting, and there would be a glass slide. And so I would just look at the glass slide to see if there's something on it, and very, very small particles, because they're spraying the paint, so it's atomized paint particles. It's really hard to see. I was lucky because it was red, and if it was black or white, I probably wouldn't have known, because it would have just maybe looked like dust or gravel or anything really. But I did find some, and quite a few days there, see like 5 days there, I had some overspray. And what I would do is we have a wind logger, so it would tell us which direction the wind was blowing that day. So I would compare the paint, the slides. I would compare the slides that I found paint on with the wind records for that day, and usually it matched up to be like, oh, okay, say like the southern slides had paint on them, the wind was blowing south that day, so it would kind of like match up and make sense. Spills at C-SPAN are a pretty big deal. It's a key performance indicator for them on their environmental side. And a big part of spills is spill prevention and spill response. And then what I was doing, which was spill reporting. So we have databases where we put down what happened, like if there's a spill, we'll put down if it was a large spill or small, if it was a major or minor. We would describe what happened, and then we would describe any kind of corrective actions that we can make to make sure it doesn't happen again, and to fix it. So there are a lot of minor spills in this type of work environment because of the amount of use of hazardous materials, and it's always going to be something that can get better. You can always decrease your spill frequency. So I was lucky that while I was at C-SPAN, there was never any crazy major spills, which is good because, you know, we're working in a marine environment, and you don't want to hear about that, right? It's not fun. So another part of it that I did was for management reviews, I would create graphs and analyze these spills, so that upper management could just look at the graph and understand what's going on in the company, I enjoyed doing that. Greenhouse gas emissions is something I worked hard on also at C-SPAN. I collected a lot of information from various members of the business to create basically our greenhouse gas emission projection. So we would convert it to CO2 equivalents, so that it would be easier to understand, and you can compare it to like a car driving for a year. And basically we would put it into a database called Climate Smart, which is really great because they can track you to year, and they make graphs for you, and so we're able to take a look at our performance. And obviously we want to see that we're becoming more efficient rather than less efficient than previous years. So also at C-SPAN, some last few topics here are Green Marine, which is a certification for companies, for ship owners and shipyards. And C-SPAN is the entirety of C-SPAN, all of their business units are Green Marine certified, which is a really big deal. It makes us look really good because it is good. It's just, in order to be certified, you have to show that you care for the environment, and like that you have spill prevention measures, that you're slowing down your vessel, driving efficiently, like the tugs that they have, and ferries, driving efficiently. And yeah, so it's really fun to see and learn about Grain Marine. Also, Climate Smart, I talked about that a little bit to do with the greenhouse gas emissions just a moment ago. Lloyd's certification, that's an external auditor. So I got to learn a little bit about that, which is cool because I've never even thought about that before. So an external auditor would come into each business unit and just let them know if they're not conforming to the Lloyd's certification program, and if they aren't, they would make a non-conformance. And so we would have to work really hard to get rid of that non-conformance and show that we are conforming to the certification program. And not to lose that would be really bad to lose that certification would be really bad for C-SPAN, so it's a pretty high priority. So I helped a lot with, I was a support member with getting everybody's actions in for the certification and making sure everybody's following up, and not just, because it's a busy place, so it's easy to forget about little things, so kind of would give a little pat on the back so they'd remember. Community outreach at C-SPAN is also pretty apparent. I was able to organize a shoreline cleanup as part of the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's really cool. I think NSCC should do it. Just think about it. I couldn't go because I was actually on my honeymoon, but I did organize it, which was really fun. So basically everybody just went to a beach and they cleaned up all the garbage on the beach. There's also McKay Creek planting, as I said before, where they're planting some native species and removing some invasives. Another really fun part that I had just recently with C-SPAN was making the donations to the Marine Mammal Rescue Center and the SPCA's Wild Ark. So the Marine Mammal Rescue Center, self-explanatory, they rescue marine animals, and it's primarily harbor seals. As you can see in these photos, it's pretty cute. Most of them are babies, either because their mom left them or mom didn't want to come back because there's too many humans around. Sometimes they just are malnourished or hurt, so we need to take them in, not we. But yeah, so that was really fun to see those baby harbor seals. There's also some sea lions, and they have sea otters too. And then the Wild Ark is a wild, they take in wild animals rather than like a dog or a cat. They take them in and they will heal them and bring them back to health if they're injured or malnourished, similar to the Marine Mammal Rescue Center. So yeah, we gave each community $1,000, which felt really good. Waste management at C-SPAN is pretty amazing. There are so many different directions that they go, from plastics to wood to steel to all of their recycling. They have something called, oh shoot, I forget what it's called. But waste to energy. It's called waste to energy, and basically it's stuff, hard plastics like hard hats. You can put them in a certain bin, and we have a facility here in the Lower Mainland that will transform it into energy, so electricity, which is really cool. So we have that going on. Sometimes I would make posters to keep staff all uppity up about recycling and reducing and reusing, so that was good. And I also made a green event kind of flyer, which was nice. So we're trying to push everybody to be a little more green with their events, so that we're not buying plastic cups constantly. Instead, we're getting a water cooler, or we're using recyclable. We're buying from vendors who have recyclable or compostable packages, which is good, and not using balloons, because balloons are really bad for the environment. So I had a really great time working at C-SPAN, and I'm really grateful for all of the people I worked with. They were so kind, and they were so supportive, and made me feel like I really was a part of their team, and that I was actually making a difference there at C-SPAN, which meant a lot. I actually I recently got employed with Golder Associates. I start on Tuesday, the 14th, so I'm really excited for that. Hoping to wrap this up and finally have my diploma in my hands. Another update with me is I got married, as you guys knew I was going to, so I'm actually Jenna Olsen now, no longer Jenna Jones. It was really great. I had an amazing wedding and happy times. And then shortly after that, I was actually hit by a car on my bike, so that kind of put a little bubble in my life for a while, but I'm happy that things are much better now. So we went to India for our honeymoon after that, and it was absolutely amazing, really great adventure. I really miss Nova Scotia Community College, and I sometimes wish I could be back because you're learning so much all the time, and it's really an enriching experience, and I haven't learned something new for so long. So anyways, I'd like to thank the teachers so much for all your support, and Wilbur, thank you for being patient on my presentation. I've been waiting for my term to end, and it finally did end, so I feel like I can efficiently present to you everything I did. Yeah, thank you so much.